Let's talk about Hong Kong, where essentially the one country, two systems that was supposed to exist for 50 years, you can put a fork in it and done way before that 50 years ran out as laws were passed, where China was able to pass laws that essentially meant that if you are guilty of any sort of a crime, which in Hong Kong, which could result in a 10-year jail term, then you're going to be able to be yanked back to the mainland. But the truth is they're not really going to even have to yank. They've already arrested people who are in Hong Kong jails tonight. Among other things that do carry 10-year jail penalties is about having seditious material. That, among other things, includes a flag saying Hong Kong independence. Here's a look at what's happening in China as we speak.
23 years ago today, Hong Kong was returned to China by the UK. Thanks to the new national security law, it has never been under tighter control. A picture of discipline and order. Exactly what the Chinese Communist Party wants to ensure in Hong Kong with its sweeping legislation.
Cheers!
All that called for celebration, and so Hong Kong's pro-Beijing leader, Carrie Lam, raised a toast.
It is an essential and timely decision for restoring stability in Hong Kong. The significance of this decision is multifaceted. It shows that the central government is determined to restore stability in Hong Kong after a year of escalating violence and riots since last June.
So now leaders around the world are talking about potentially offering a direct political asylum for those who would be immediately affected by what's just happened in China, amongst them our own Prime Minister.
This is not a position Australia has commented on in isolation. We've done so with many other like-minded countries about these events. The basic law and the safeguards that were put in place with the handover we would expect to be upheld. I think that's a very reasonable position and a very consistent position for the government.
The UK Prime Minister and his political party were saying as many as 3 million people might be able to move back to the UK.
The law also threatens the freedoms and rights protected by the Joint Declaration. We made clear, Mr. Speaker, that if China continued down this path, we would introduce a new route for those with British national overseas status to enter the UK, granting them limited leave to remain, with the ability to live and work in the UK and thereafter to apply for citizenship. And that is precisely what we will do now.
Now, James, do you think that Australia should be offering a similar path? And how do we make sure that the path is for people who are legitimately going to be the people that are at threat in China, as opposed to maybe some people who will pose as such and then end up here and getting full citizenship?
Well, Paul, yesterday was a very sad day for the people of Hong Kong. It proved that the Chinese Communist Party is willing to break every single promise it made to the people of Hong Kong and the world in 1997. And I think it's entirely appropriate that the United Kingdom and Australia lead the charge in opening our arms to the people of Hong Kong who want to flee those broken promises and that despotism that they will now live under if they remain in Hong Kong. If you scout around the world to look for the best possible potential migrants for Australia, you'd be hard-pressed to find better potential migrants than the people of Hong Kong. They are creative, they are industrious, they are entrepreneurial, they are deeply committed to the values that we are, whether that's the rule of law or freedom of speech or democracy. Frankly, many of them have a deeper commitment to the Commonwealth and a sense of Anglo-spheric identity than many Australians do. They sing the British anthem, they took the British flag into the Hong Kong Parliament in their protest. These are amazing potential migrants for Australia. So I think we should be opening our arms wide to welcome them in. Of course, we have to be alert to the possibility that people who were in fact sympathetic to the Chinese Communist Party and sympathetic to the Hong Kong government in its repression of the people might try to slip in. But the overwhelming burden here is to help free people escape despotism, and I think we should.
What do you think, Bronwyn?
Absolutely. The connection between Hong Kong and Australia is a very strong one. And I think you can remember, for instance, that after he retired from the High Court of Australia, Sir Anthony Mason actually sat on the appeal court in Hong Kong. There was a lot of sharing of that history of democracy in the Westminster system. We share information on criminality. But it's important to remember that we have to be very vigilant because the Communist Chinese will try and send criminals that they let out of their jails here. They'll try and send spies. So we have to be very careful about that too. But certainly the people who are already here on visas should be allowed to stay. And yes, we should look at taking more of them from Hong Kong. I think we also have to remember that the Brits gave Hong Kong back to China because China threatened to cut off the water supply to Hong Kong. And, of course, it's the whole fiction that was created of one country, two systems was under a different regime, not under President Xi.
Yeah, correct.
He has got a completely different attitude to the one that we saw initially develop under Deng Xiaoping, where we thought that they would not only embrace a capitalist system, but they would want to open up and they would want to have more freedom for their people. And there was a movement in China, but it has been stamped out and stamped out viciously. So if you now criticise the Communist Party, you can have life in jail. And indeed, if you do it here in Australia, then go back, you'll get life in jail. And remember that Julie Bishop and Malcolm Turnbull wanted to allow that extradition treaty to apply to Chinese people in Australia.
Correct.
Thank God we stopped it.
Yeah, absolutely.